Good evening and welcome to the Town of Sandwich Finance Committee meeting for March 3rd, 2026. Tonight's meeting is being aired on Sandwich Community Television and will be available for replay. I am calling our meeting to order. Let's begin by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just our ongoing reminder that as we're speaking, to be sure your microphone's on and speak clearly so those at home and those with us here tonight in the hall can hear us well. I'd like to invite anyone from the public who might have some thoughts to share. Mr. Holden is the only one with us. Thank you for being with us. And he's all set. We do have minutes from our previous two meetings, February 3rd and February 10th, that were included in our agenda packet. Does anyone have any corrections or updates to either of those? Seeing none on that, do I have a motion to approve the February 3rd meetings?
Motion.
And it's motion by Crystal, second by Nancy. All in favor of approving the February 3rd minutes? Say aye. Any abstain? Matt's abstaining. Thank you. Matt and Bob abstain. So with that, Jim.
Actually, Mr. Chair, as a point of order, I think we have to do public forum as well. Do that first.
I did that.
Oh, you did do it? Okay.
Yes. Any in favor of, all in favor then? We have 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor then. 6 with myself and 2 abstentions. Okay, and then could I get a motion to approve the February 10th minutes? Moved by Jim, second by Matt. All in favor?
I abstain.
Abstained by Crystal. 8-1. Thank you all. On the correspondence statements and announcement, I'd like to begin by thanking our town employees for the extraordinary work and efforts put into last week during and after the windstorm and snowstorm that all came together. And Bud, the ongoing communications you led were, in my opinion, pretty fantastic. The safety first approach from DPW, fire, and police were important. The spirit of collaboration that I saw with resources being made available to the town by other communities and the state was important in a way to keep things moving. So thank you very much. And between a planned week off and then the storm, the Finance Committee hasn't met for a couple weeks, but we're back at it. And thanks to Bill, we have a plan for and a schedule to continue our work throughout the budget season. We'll pick up on the big three, DPW, police, and fire next week. And tonight we're going to focus in on human resources, health insurance, and the wastewater project. Does anyone else have any announcements or correspondence? Seeing none there. Bud, why don't you lead us off with several updates that I know you have
Sure.
for us on how the overall budget's been progressing.
I want to thank everyone and apologize. Like, we had to cancel last Tuesday night. It just we weren't ready. And as Ed had just highlighted, Chief Burke wasn't going to be able to make tonight, so we thought it would be better to have all three come in together. And they had a heck of a week last week, so I thought it was good to, so they'll be in next Tuesday night. And as I know Heather would want to say the same thing, but we have a relatively new communication coordinator, Kate Fogarty. She did all that work. I mean, coordinated with Heather, but she did the physical work and a lot of those updates. So, we hope it'll bear fruit moving forward in terms of, continued outreach to the public. So, a couple of other quick things. I know when I gave out the agenda packets in front of each of your chairs, if you recall, when we did the initial budget presentation, there were a couple of items that we highlighted in red because we didn't have those numbers. So since our last meeting, we have those numbers. So there were 2 pages in the tab 1, which is the budget presentation, and then 2 pages in tab 3 relating to school enrollment and out-of-district placements. So having that data, we were able to finalize those 4 pages that I handed out. So if you wanted to replace them or just put them in those tabs, I think the correct page is on the bottom on the page that it would replace. Couple of other quick things. It's the time of year when we start, getting better numbers on a few of our items, and that couldn't be more true with our health insurance and retirement assessments. So the first thing I wanted to go over is what's on the screens right now, and it's in your packets. And so first, Bill and I had talked about trying to do a budget changes page that you guys and the select board could follow easier as things get updated, like what numbers have gone up and down. And when I get to the end, I'll stress like something else that we know we have to address a little bit more, and that's the snow and ice, which we're in deficit, obviously. So the 2 big numbers that we got that really went in our favor, one is the health insurance. The rates were significantly less than we were advised to budget for, and so that led us to be able to decrease the health insurance line item by $800,000. And then we got the final retirement assessment early in February, actually the 13th, so we were able to update that number. And our assessment went down quite a bit, so that saved another roughly $375,000. So between those 2 things was almost $1.2 million in savings. And so as we're prone to do, we didn't spend it. We tried to put it in places that made sense. So significantly increased the recommended excess levy capacity. So that gives us more cushion for down the road, but it means we're not charging people for that amount of money. We increased the snow and ice projected deficit from 100,000 to 200,000. We now know we need to probably go higher than that. Stabilization, and OPEB, we increased to put some money aside in our 2 reserve accounts. There were some additional costs associated with a few DPW projects that I think we let you know about when we talked about the capital budget. So those went up by $65,000. And then Upper Cape got us a revised assessment amount based on what the governor's budget was. And so whatever the assessment is, we have to match. So we did that. And then since we gave the budget presentation the last week in January, any personnel changes that had happened between then and now has led to a decrease of about $9,400. So it means that the total increase that we recommended for the general government for next year is down to 2.88%. So if I go to the next page, which is really the important 1-page summary that we look at constantly, a lot of those figures that are now in green were in yellow prior to getting the final number for group health insurance and the county retirement assessment. So because of that, you'll see that we increased our excess levy reserve significantly by over $500,000. On the right-hand side, we bumped the snow and ice deficit to 200, and I know when I go through this next week, it won't be as many changes, but I think we're going to try to increase that based on a conversation that Bill and Caroline Caravana, the town accountant, and I had today, try to bump that to 300,000. We had the revised numbers for group health insurance and the county retirement assessment, increase some of the reserve money going to stabilization and OPEB, and then that slightly updated capital budget. So again, in my opinion, we've gone from a really good budget to almost an exceptional one in the sense that we're, both operating budgets are under 3% in terms of what's being requested. We have a huge amount of excess levy reserve that we increased, and we're trying to address a couple of other critical accounts. So that's a quick update on those. I think when I go through things next week, We'll probably change possibly the amount we're putting in stabilization and increase the snow and ice by another 100,000, just because I think we're going to need it. The bills haven't all come in yet from last week. Like, we know roughly what the internal overtime costs were in all of our departments, but a lot of the private contract work, and we have a handful of private contractors that help plow snow, but we, had special heavy-duty equipment from like Bevilacqua, several other places that was assisting us, and we got quite a few state resources as well that helped us, especially in days like 3 and 4 after the storm. And I know Chief Burke and Chief Keen, and especially Paul Tilton, can highlight those next week.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Bud? Matt?
Well, this is probably a question that can't be answered right now, but in regards to excess levy capacity, what is an average across municipalities for excess levy to budget?
If you look at most towns, their free cash certifications are significantly higher than ours. Mashpee's is over 20 million, Bourne's over 20 million, Falmouth is over 20 million. But that means they're taxing people for that money, and they're not spending it the prior year, and then they use it for the following year's budget. Our excess levy reserve only started after Unit 3 was added at the power plant. And as you guys remember, there were a couple of things that we funded within 2.5 from that money as one-time expenses, but we've been really judicious about trying not to touch that, and I think we see that as a resource. I know we're going to talk about it later, but if health insurance continues to be a bigger problem, across the country, and those costs go up, that most likely that excess levy reserve will have to drop to fund some of those expenses down the road. But at least we have some cushion and some, the forethought to put some of that money aside, because a lot of towns are up against it already.
So in a year like this year, where we were a little nervous early on, and now we're adding $350,000, I think was the number, to excess levy. I mean, that's a real positive to show that we're not.
Really, I think it was 550.
550.
Huge. Yeah, huge.
Yeah, people should recognize that we are not, we are not overspending, and
It's way too soon to give an exact number, until I get votes from my bosses and you guys take your votes. But I think when Bill and I looked at the average bill, what's projected for next year versus this year, it's less than a $25 difference.
yeah, it's a great thing. All right, thank you.
Just so that, make sure I'm clear too, and for the public, when you say if it drops, meaning we had to take some of the excess levy limit.
You had to spend it.
You had it, so then at that point, it then becomes tax.
Yeah.
That's when residents get taxed for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's kind of save now, pay later.
Yeah.
Is that?
But it's been what?
Yeah. Years.
5-6 years that we've had an excess levy reserve of over $3 million, and that's what we estimate now. When Ben Steich comes in, the director of assessing, to do the tax certification process with the select board, it's been over $4 million every year.
I think it's great, though, that we're allowing the residents to keep their money until we actually need it, rather than do what Mashpee and Bourne might be doing and take the money and just keep rolling it forward. So it seems like a healthy thing to be doing.
I think it's smart. Another way to look at it is we, pick the topic du jour that, we want to address. You could be charging that and putting that money towards that one specific issue, but then know when we need it for other things, that's got to stop. But I think it's a pretty safe way that we've been handling it. I don't know, I don't go to other finance committee meetings in other towns. I'd be shocked if they even talk about excess levy reserve.
Anybody else for Bud? Okay, we'll move on to our next topic, which is an update on wastewater. The Finance Committee is committed and has been committed to keeping a watchful eye, as we reported last year in our town report, on the large projects that are in front of the town. And with that, we're joined this evening by Dave Mason, who's contracted by the town to lead the project planning efforts in regard to wastewater infrastructure. So, Dave, welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you for having me get back again into the exciting world of wastewater. We had met just about a year ago, and I'll kind of give an update. It's a little shorter based on some things that have been accomplished also. But we're still in communication. Well, first, in your packet was the phasing plan for phase 1, 2, and 3, and also the estuaries watershed plans. I bring those to your attention because this is what's driving our effort, and I'll speak to the issues that the momentary hurdles as we keep moving forward on this project. So based on the estuary maps for the south of the town, where portions of the town are within Three Bays, Pompanesett Bay, and Wacoit Bay, we're still meeting with those towns regularly. We're running what's referred to as nitrogen loading scenarios through SMAS and a gentleman named Ed Eichner to develop models to look at how, if we sewer so many houses, how does that impact the percent of nitrogen that's making it to the estuary. So this is an ongoing thing as we go back and forth and work with those towns for the purpose of nitrogen credit trading, to see if there's areas that we can sewer in their town to pick up our nitrogen, or do we have to sewer areas within Sandwich? And the issue becomes in those southern portions of the towns that the growth is so spread out that there's a higher cost associated with running sewer line in those areas. So if we can look at working with the towns to consolidate that sewer construction and get a bigger bang for the buck, then that's what we're attempting to do. So we're progressing on that. And keep in mind, too, that when the CWRMP was developed for the town of Sandwich, when we put that in place, that was prior to the state implementing the 208 and the new areas of sensitive nitrogen areas within the town. And so as we've adapted to that, the state law, to identify what we need to do in those areas, we will also need to alter the CWRMP. When the town developed the CWRMP, there were components that had multiple options as far as how to move forward based on contingencies, based on what we could do with the other communities, and what we would have to take care of ourselves. So I'll talk about that further as we go, but that document will be updated in the near future in order to, as a result of the work we're doing with the abutting communities, and as a result of the work that we're doing with Joint Base Cape Cod and the utilization or potential utilization of the wastewater treatment plant out there. Part of the CWRMP included projects associated with the schools, specifically the high school, to update their wastewater treatment system. That work was designed, put out to bid. That bid was approved with Weston Sampson. Site work has been initiated out there for clearing the area around the treatment plant. That work will fully be initiated this coming summer. As far as which will updating the system that's there and the facilities. There's currently a building which you may not know is there because it's hidden, so amongst the brush. So we're updating the facilities to operate that treatment plant, thus avoiding any violation conflicts with DEP, because it was a requirement for us to do that. That funding, the cost of that is approximately $1.8 million and change. And $849,000 of that piece is from the ARPA money that we are working on spending down towards that project. The other component was the addressing the treatment plants at the Oak Ridge and Forestdale schools. We had met with DEP in the past and received approval to decommission those plants. The reason those plants were decommissioned is that they were designed for over 15,000 gallons a day. They're using approximately 5,000 gallons a day. The DEP requires a groundwater discharge permit for anything over 10,000 gallons per day. So we were able to document the use, the water use over the past 10 years to prove to DEP that it is not using anything near what the treatment plant was designed for, and those plants were not operating correctly, properly, because they didn't have the adequate flow in order to have them work as designed. So with approval from DEP, we are decommissioning the plants. They've eliminated the groundwater discharge permits, and we had Wright Pierce design the systems to convert them to a standard Title V systems. That was put out to bid. Ardent Corporation was the winning bidder for both of those projects, and that's expected to initiate that work's expected to start in March, in late March at this point. And the cost of that project is $432,000 and change for that. So as part of this work also, as I've spoken to with the changes with the state Title V and the need to update the CWRMP, we've been regularly meeting with DEP. And we brought this to your attention last year at this time, in which we were looking at the funding options relative to the availability, whether the projects had the ability to receive SRF funding, the state revolving fund money. And at issue was that we had run some scenarios, financial scenarios were run looking at the time value of money relative to, not having SRF funding or having SRF funding in order to move forward with the Joint Base Cape Cod. And based on the numbers we were seeing, we determined, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we could not get SRF funding, then going that direction wasn't going to be a solution for us, because it is a privately held operation. So we continued to have meetings with DEP. Bud was very persistent with that. And we were multiple meetings with them, in which the last meeting we had a verbal acknowledgement that they are going to alter their SRF funding, regulations, to basically say there's the opportunity to fund a project if it is involved with a private entity. So we are waiting to hear back from DEP to schedule another meeting to go over that process. But verbally, it appeared very promising at this point, which would mean then that the scenarios that we looked at with SRF funding to go to the private entity would be worthwhile. So there's other issues there, but we had to get by that to have an understanding of the direction we were going with that. And at the same time, with those discussions, we were very, we laid out what projects and what part of town and how much gallonage we were looking to contribute to JBCC. And they were still, in acknowledging that those work should be, have SRF funding available, that they acknowledged the type of project we were doing. And I don't want to say it was an approval, but for the work they're doing going forward for the SRF funding, based on the areas we talked about that we plan on sewering, they acknowledged and were fully aware of what areas in the town we were sewering and the quantity we were looking to contribute also. So that was very promising. The fourth thing I have on there is, you may have heard, is there's been some work going on in Mashpee. They had a cluster system approved out on a road called Gunther Road. They put in they had an alternative type system approved by the taxpayers in Mashpee. They're going through the groundwater discharge permit process with DEP. The location of it abuts Pierre Vernia Drive, or the residents of Pierre Vernia Drive. I bring this to your attention as we've been working with Mashpee on this project, because we put a placeholder there with if there was the desire in the future to connect Sandwich residents in that area to that system, to expand that existing system out there as a cluster system off of Pimlico Pond Road, where Gunther Road is. We're evaluating that because we're not sure if there's that the nitrogen reduction is worth the value. So we're still evaluating that option there, but we're keeping it on the table. You're aware that the town acquired the property out between Route 130 and Quaker Meeting House Road, known as Autumnwood, approximately 85 acres, let's say. And so we just signed a contract with Wright Pierce to initiate the hydrogeological study on that property for wastewater purposes. And additionally, as part of that, as part of that work, we will in the future be communicating to the public as far as we anticipate having drill rigs out there to evaluate the soil and to determine the capacity of that area for future sewage discharge if we deem it necessary, and for future phases, looking at like phases 2 and 3 potentially. So we're having that work completed, and that's being paid for through the WIF funding. And as I mentioned, we're in the process of we're going to initiate the update of the CWRMP, and part of that also, that work we're having is, in the contract for that, is working on the watershed permits with Barnstable, Mashpee, and Falmouth. The watershed permits were originally approved by state DEP to have a watershed permit in place by the end of this year. That was rather aggressive because we were still waiting on answers for issues associated with JBCC. And at the same time, the abutting communities extended their timeframes out to 2030. So DEP has approved our watershed permitting completion till the end of December 2030. And so that work we're doing with the abutting communities will be a component of updating the CWRMP, which may result in some changes to the phasing, minor changes to that in phase 1 and some in phase 2 also. So that work's expected to be initiated this coming summer. And that's what I have to date on that.
That's it?
That is it.
Very good. Thank you. Questions? Bob?
Nice summary, Dave. Thank you very much. Awful lot going on, and it's appreciated. Item 3, Joint Base Cape Cod, and the private entity that was going to be operating there. Some time ago, we were informed that there hadn't been discussions with the private entity about pricing, that we didn't have any sort of documentation that described how pricing adjustments would be made and communicated and how frequently. And we were, at the time, unaware of any regulation that would impose constraints on the private entity from changing their pricing. So, depending on what the DEP says, we still seem to be going ahead with a plan to connect to the private entity. Can I ask, where are we in terms of our understanding of how the private entity will price, how changes to price would be negotiated or not, and whether or not there's any sort of regulatory constraint on how the private entity can price?
So In terms of the desire for that information, I acknowledge that because that will need to be forthcoming. At this point, we have not gone into that extent of conversation because, one, we weren't sure if we could get DEP into, and when we say that we're moving forward in that direction, based on our preliminary analysis, as far as the comparisons that we had done, whether, with regards to doing wastewater in town here alone or going it together out on the base, it did indicate, those preliminary numbers did indicate it would be financially better to go to the base. So there's still issues that need to go in that direction. At the same time, that need to be addressed for that. But at the same time, we needed to resolve the SRF issue first before we started building, on those numbers. The reason being is, too, if we can get approval for the SRF, then it's worthwhile going forward based on those preliminary calculations of costs that were done. I know it doesn't give you a full answer on that, but it's if we get, to have that SRF, if we did not receive that SRF funding, we're building a treatment plant on our own property at this point at a higher cost. If we can get the SRF funding, it is worth based on the preliminary numbers, going forward with the base, with the understanding we need to look at what the costs actually would be further.
Okay, I understand the response. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I don't know how you can draw the conclusion that it's a better economic deal to tie into something that we don't know what the price of it is. But I'll leave it at that for tonight's conversation. Number 5, the ongoing Wright-Pierce evaluation of the acquired property. What is the likelihood, or is there any likelihood, that Wright-Pierce could conclude that the property isn't suitable at all for wastewater treatment?
Based on preliminary work that we've looked at that the water district had done and test holes that I had done on properties that we were setting aside for wastewater, I would not anticipate that occurring. Depth to groundwater in there, in that area is probably 80 plus feet. In terms of the state would look at issues associated, one, with the type of soil, groundwater mounding, and impacts associated with wells in the area. That area is not in a zone 2. The flow, the hydrology based on preliminary information is away from any wells. I can't see that would not occur. I can't see that it would be an issue that DEP would not approve.
Okay, thank you. Just one more, if I may. So just a short while ago, and I don't know if this is to you or to Bud, so I'll just throw it that way. But just a short while ago, we went to town meeting and asked for another 1% from taxpayers for wastewater. Taxpayers didn't seem to be in the mood that night. Is there any discussion going on right now about coming back to taxpayers in the short term, refloat the idea of additional monies, wastewater?
Do you want to take it?
I'll take it. Yeah, we asked for the additional 1%. It passed a special town meeting. I forget the dates. I think it was in January maybe of 2025, and then in May at the required ballot question that failed. The select board did bring that up about a month ago on a side conversation on something else, but I don't believe that it would appear, certainly this May. I don't know what the full board feels about it. If you remember, there has to be, I think, the 35-day gap between a town meeting vote and a ballot vote. So it's up to the board whether or not that gets considered or not. Again, they haven't indicated one way or the other. I did put in the select board packet for Thursday night a draft list of potential warrant articles where I throw everything but the kitchen sink that we can think of in there. I have that there, but I have it in the section with another article that I don't think we would go forward with either one. But that's just my personal thought. As we've said before, like the public would actually save a lot of money if they ever did approve the extra 1%. We would be able to do a lot more, not only the permitting work, which most of that we can do with the 2% that we're collecting now, but a lot of some of the early implementation we'd probably be able to start doing without issuing debt over and above that. But to be determined.
Okay, I gladly defer this part of the conversation to a later point in time. But I think it's really difficult for the Finance Committee to look at the budget and think about its impact on taxpayers. Right? We just had a discussion where someone said, oh, we looked at the average tax bill and it's $25, and I gotta say, I was sort of enthused. But if we don't understand the what else, and I seem to talk about the what else a lot here, but if the what else includes wastewater, sooner rather than later, or the what else includes the fire station and the DPW, again, sooner rather than later, or it includes school building improvement spending, sooner rather than later, I think it's incumbent upon this committee, in considering the budget, to know that, and to talk about that, and to understand the what else. Because if we treat all these things as siloed individual considerations, each one of them, I think, arguably feels really reasonable and doable, but when you put them all together, it's meaningful. And so I would just ask, we don't have to solve it now, but I think we need to be a little more transparent among ourselves around what we're looking at today and talking about, and what we either know or suspect could be 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and I think it's incumbent upon this committee to ask what's 3 years and 5 years down the road. I just think we have to do a little better job about talking about this among ourselves. Enough said.
Can I just clarify? Because I don't think we could have been more direct with the public that if they did approve the extra 1%, it would cost the average taxpayer $85, and it would bring in roughly $1.4 million per year through the WIF that we could then spend on other things. So we were very clear about that. I just want to say,
But I'm not suggesting we're not clear, Bud. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying, we just had a conversation here and said, gee, this budget is really good, and it is, and we said the impact to the taxpayers is $25. Then we're talking about wastewater, and, well, the impact is $65 or $85 or something else. Well, that's plus the $25. I'm not arguing good or bad. I'm not. All I'm suggesting is that as we think about the budget and think about what we're really looking for taxpayers to do, right, that we, to the extent we understand it or suspect it, we talk about all of it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not criticizing, and I'm not saying we're not being transparent, but I think in the middle of the budget process, we should be talking about all of it.
I just want to be 100% clear on these bigger projects. So like on wastewater, Dave has been saying for years, and we've been saying at meetings, phase 1, which is really all that we could fit at the base. We don't think phases 2 and 3 could go out there unless they did some huge upgrade of their system. I mean, we're looking as a community over the next 20, 25 years, about $200 million. That number has been similar for quite a while in terms of what that cost of phase 1 is. And that's true, except in higher numbers for most of the other Cape Towns. And I know, but I'm just being honest, and as we've shared with you before, even if we voted to issue that debt tomorrow, which we're not even close ready to do, like it wouldn't impact people's bills for about a decade. Because by the time you get the permits, by the time you bid it, you start doing the work, and how you're required to bond, it's a long way away, but it's inevitable. Like, I want to stress that. That's not going away for any of us. And then the other part, I think we've been as upfront as possible about the DPW fire, of what the estimated costs were. We've been going back to try to reduce the scope a little bit, look at another location as was requested. My guess is we would, that group would have the consultants back in before the select board in late March or April as an update. I mean, there's a lot of discussion, obviously, that has to take place. So I'm just being upfront, and the school one I haven't seen a number about yet. Yeah.
Sorry, Dave, but I'll keep going because we're going to keep going. And I'd like to suggest that we append to this sheet a sheet that says, what else? And right
Doesn't the budget
in front-
presentation that I gave you guys have that? It's got it in it.
Right in front of us, right, every week we can flip to the what else and understand it. I'm not throwing stones here, I'm just saying there's a lot of what else.
And I just feel like we've been very upfront
I'm
and
not
very
sugge-
transparent.
I'm not suggesting you haven't been, Bud. I'm just suggesting that this committee needs to do a better job of having it right in front of us. So as we're looking at all these things, we're thinking about it holistically. That's all I'm saying. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I've been asleep at the wheel and haven't been thinking about it holistically. But I'm saying there are big numbers, big expense numbers, and I don't want to slow down the evening because OPEB's coming up. We should be thinking about it and talking about what to do about it.
And Bob, if I could just jump back to your question regarding the costs, associated with the JBCC there also, just in terms of that, the scenarios that we ran there, I'll just run through them quickly. I don't want to put a definitive number because it's going to change, but at the same time, if we went with JBCC only and it was ineligible for SRF funding, it would be $258 million. If we went with JBCC and presumed partially SRF eligible, it'd be $205 million. And if we went with JBCC fully SRF eligible, it's $194 million. So, and if we went in town with JBC in the future, and we did in the town, it'd be $180 million at that point. But that doesn't build in operating costs or anything like that.
Dave, how do we move from a verbal commitment to a written commitment? What has to happen there?
With DEP?
Yes.
Yes, we'll get there. It just takes, some time and nailing down people for meetings. But again, I think that last meeting we had was probably the most positive we have had since this time last year. And which we finally got off the call, and it's promising. And I think they've put themselves into a corner. They're requiring, over years, they've stated that there has to be a development that's regional. And they've been pushing for a regional solution. And so we're offering a regional solution, but their regulations prohibit a regional solution. And we've put that on their doorstep. And at the same time, they're putting us to a time frame relative to when we need to have this work done, but they won't give us a decision. So they're holding up that time frame and the decision to do that. So based on this, I think that they understand that, and based on this last meeting, I think we will see that we will have in hand the change in the regulation. When you say a written agreement, it's going to be a change in the regulation.
Yeah.
So that all communities can benefit from that, really. So
We wouldn't really have that in our hand until we actually got a permit, which is years away. I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
yeah.
Regulation wouldn't.
no, the permit, we would know, the regulation, we know, but the actual permit is
Right.
probably years away.
And again, as I have said, they're fully aware of what our intention is for our permitting and what we'd move forward. So their decision-making is on the basis of what we're proposing as a project.
Are we utilizing our local legislators to help advocate into DEP?
They actually just need letters from the different bodies that oversee the two estuaries, Cape Cod Bay and Buzzards
Change the
Bay.
regulation.
They need a letter of support to go through a different section of the Federal Clean Water Act. They told us that it was going to take at least 6 months for them to get that done. But when they did send a follow, we met with them just before Thanksgiving. They sent a follow-up just before Christmas and said that they had already started those conversations with the estuary overseers, and sounds pretty hopeful.
I would have to think they would, because the intent, they're benefiting from what the work we're going to do.
They asked us for a follow-up meeting, which we gave them some dates for, and they want to include the private company that's running the base, so that's a good sign. So we're hopeful on that.
And with regards to the 1% funding, may I, just in terms of the, your typical, your engineering costs for a project, what we're looking at for these kind of numbers, it's 25% of the construction, approximately. It can vary, with contingencies and everything. But at the same time, we're not, with the WIF money, we're not borrowing money. SRF funding is not eligible for design. We have design money to keep moving forward and to keep working with the communities. The benefit of that 1% is fulfilling what that 25% is on 194 million.
Jackie?
Dave, quick question. So the CWRMP hasn't been updated in a couple of years. We're now due for an update.
Yes.
How much does that cost? And is that in the WIF funding already?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the cost of that?
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, the original CWRMP that the town had developed was based on a $750,000 grant that we applied for through the base based on contamination there. Many communities pay $1 million plus to have it done. We did it for $750,000 in a grant.
And what does it cost?
Isn't the contract I just signed a hair under 500,000?
Yes.
400 something.
400 something. Thanks.
Nancy?
I think we talked about this a few years ago, but what about the people who live or have businesses in this Phase 1 area? I think there were some questions around what do they do in the meantime? It's coming down the pike and their systems may be failing. Is there a challenge
So
to those?
I'm fully aware that the health department is receiving those calls and they're aware of that situation. And, as far as they're continually communicating as far as where are we for time on this. And, I'd like to give them tomorrow, but, so they're working with people on, these systems. There's processes to allow for the local Board of Health to work with these individuals for some of these systems in order to minimize the impact when they may be, in the future connecting. Keep in mind, we're minimum 10 years out, but at the same time, they are conscious of that and are working with homeowners.
Would any of those impacts expedite this at all, or is it just happens later on? I mean, if you have a whole lot of failures coming up, would that expedite the process?
No, we're still, I get you, you'd end up targeting areas and whatnot. And I can pretty much predict where those failures are going to be in certain areas based on the conditions. But as far as, no, it doesn't expedite it that way. It's really the process is the design to make, to get something that's worth the value at the best money available. And that's why, as I had said in speaking with Mashpee, I don't know if that system's worth the nitrogen reduction value there. So we're not going to spend $25 million, to connect, 200 houses if we're not getting the bang for the buck that we need down in Pompanesett Bay.
A good example, though, Nancy, of what you're talking about is Oak Ridge. Their discharge is not in a zone 2 of public water contribution. So we think we have a forever waiver from DEP.
Yes.
With Forestdale, we have a temporary waiver. When a sewer line goes past 130, we have to connect.
We're required to.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
And this is just for fun. Many years ago, I was involved in a project where the groundwater and the surface water were very close to each other. And they were proposing a small 200-unit package treatment system. It still requires the exact same process to identify a discharge location, get permitted by a discharge permit, and then there's an appeals process that's available to anybody that might be aggrieved by that. So the position that we're in is probably the best position that you can be in, and that we have two potential alternatives. We have an existing treatment facility with a potential discharge location, and a potential for a new treatment plant with our own discharge location. So Sandwich is in a really strong position to respond to this issue differently than other communities, both from the strategic planning that's been done, the collaboration with our neighbors, and because we don't have any impaired watershed in our community yet.
Dave, you mentioned early on in the presentation about the south side and the potential of teaming up with other towns. Does that mean that section of Sandwich could potentially be advanced and not be part of phase one? It'd be like a pre-phase?
That is possible, yes. You know, we're looking at in 3 bays with Barnstable right now. Is that potential based on how they are advancing in those areas of that impaired watershed? So that is possible because, you know, as far as, you know, the different phasing, there's a reason down here is in phase one that the committee at the time identified, and it's reasons other than nutrient also. There's high groundwater, small lot sizes, a number of systems down here that have groundwater discharge permits that have nowhere to go, you know, so, but at the same time, if in that pump in the 3 bays watershed, there was the ability to advance that faster, that we would move that.
And then have we contemplated how to fund that?
Well, so, yeah, I mean, that's, but at the, yes, I mean, but at the same time, we don't know what we're funding yet, you know, so that has a time frame, though, by law, that we need to adhere to. We're just trying to find what's the best solution in order to compare that cost. I mean, that gets back to Bob's point, you know, with regards to that. I fully acknowledge that, but it's like, I can't tell you out there that we're gonna do 200 houses at this cost yet. You know, we're still running scenarios to determine how far down I have to get to, you know, in order to meet the nitrogen level in the Sentinel well in Pompanesett Bay.
And then you highlighted for us how some of the WIF is being used, but back to the 2 school projects. So there's the $1 million, I guess, for Sandwich Middle High School.
Yes.
How is that going to be funded with WIF?
Yes. Yep. So and 845,000 of that 1.8 million is coming is the ARPA money that we have in hand.
And the Oak Ridge
And the
and Forest
432
Hills all
for
coming.
Forest Hill?
Is from the WIF.
Okay. So it's all WIF. So what does that do to WIF, right?
No,
Back to kind of Bob's early point of,
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've brought in between money that town meeting's already appropriated and what we plan to appropriate in May for, you know, what's built up since last May, you know, we've appropriated roughly $7 million to do things. So like a lot of it is gone for the things that we just mentioned, but we have like an unencumbered balance of probably 5.
Correct. And I'll add in there, you know, we took a look at the March 1st balance because that's what we used for the May town meeting vote today and, or yesterday, excuse me. And we're going to be appropriating another $1.6 million in available funds for WIF at town meeting.
thank you. Any other questions for Dave or the crew? If not, Dave, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
Time and for the update. We'll move on to health insurance and OPEB. Bill Jennings, our town's finance director and the finance committee liaison to the town, is with us virtually. So, Bill, welcome.
Sure. Thank you, Ed. I'm just going to begin. I'm just having a little technical issues tonight. I think Zoom is using the microphone from the laptop. So if there's any questions, I would just ask if Bud or Heather could relay those to me. I'm just having issues with people talk. I'm hearing them on the microphone, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, and Bill, you were coming through pretty loud, so I just turned it down a little bit.
Okay, all right. I'll talk quieter. So we just wanted to give tonight just kind of a broad overview of kind of health insurance. As you all saw, you know, it's over $15 million this year on the budget. So we just wanted to touch base tonight on kind of an overview of what the town offers its employees, how do employees become eligible to receive health insurance through the town, our joint purchase group, Maya, which you've heard us talk about numerous times, and just kind of some future challenges and also savings that we do so we can manage health insurance the best we can. So as I mentioned, the town does use Maya to purchase our health insurance. Maya is a joint purchase group with over 400 different state entities and municipal entities throughout the state. Those includes towns, water districts, school districts, and the like. Right now, we offer health insurance, dental insurance, and basic life insurance to all of our employees. The town also uses Maya to secure its property and liability insurance as well. Right now, the town manages those health insurance through our payroll and benefits office, which is located inside our treasurer collector's office here in town. I spend a lot of time working on that as well. Marie Buckner, who you're going to meet shortly, our town HR director, she also assists us with health insurance issues as they rise during the year. We generally meet with Maya probably 2 or 3 times a year just for an overview meeting of how the plans are working. We take a look at claims numbers, premiums received, and the like, just so we can kind of keep an idea of how our claims are coming in. If we have any issues with claims, there's a reinsurance process with Maya and the like. There's pooling available with Maya, which has helped us as well. So we're really fortunate to be working with Maya on that relationship throughout the year. So we currently offer, as I mentioned, health insurance and dental insurance. That is provided through Blue Cross and Blue Shield to our employees. Currently, the town covers 75% of that cost, and the remaining 25% of that cost is paid by the employees. We cover the 25% that the employees pay we get that paid through payroll deductions. So just every time someone gets paid, we're pulling out that health insurance out of their paycheck. I guess the one unusual thing that may happen is for certain school employees. The one school contract allows for what they call lump sum pay. So some teachers have the options to choose to not get paid in July and August, and they receive a lump sum paycheck at the end of June. So what we do is, in that case, we're taking their premiums in that June paycheck to cover those whole entire summer deductions as they don't receive a paycheck in the summer. And for the health insurance, we offer both a PPO plan and an HMO plan for our employees. And what was nice with Maya, when we joined Maya, we offer now an individual plan, so an employee can choose to just insure just themselves. We also have the traditional family plan, and Maya offers a great plan, which they call the two-party plan. So this could be a husband and wife, this could be a parent and child. So it's just 2 people only in the plan, and I'll get into later what this has done for us, but it's really allowed us some significant financial savings. When we were with our previous group, the Cape Cod Municipal Healthcare Group, they offered only the individual and family plan. So when we made the conversion to Maya in 2020, we were able to save significant amounts of money by Maya offering that two-party plan. So the town also has retirees. We offer a MEDEX plan to our retirees. Retirees become eligible for the MEDEX plan at 65 years old. And what happens then is Medicare becomes their primary insurance for the retirees, and the MEDEX plan serves as their Part B plan. MEDEX plans are significantly less expensive than our active plans. And what's really nice is, again, with Medicare becoming their primary insurance for retirees, MEDEX serves as that Part B. It saves the town money. I think out of our $15.2 million, that's on the budget this year, just a tad under $2 million of that is dedicated to our retiree expense for MEDEX. Next thing is just talk about the number of employees that we have currently on health insurance plans. This number is constantly fluid. I'll get into that in a minute, but we have approximately about 540 employees on active health insurance plans and about 550 on MEDEX plans. We have a total number on dental plans, which is different than health insurance, totaling about 960. Again, this number is constantly fluid. There's many things that can change this. There's job changes, there's qualifying events such as births, marriages, deaths, so that number is constantly fluid. For example, when we came back from the storm last week, we got job changes from the school, and there was 14 different job changes for the school that we received last Friday. So, depending on those job changes, if someone that had that job was on health insurance and the new employee didn't, that's a gain for the town. And then obviously vice versa is the opposite. So that number is fluid. It changes almost weekly, to be honest with you. But generally, that is kind of what we're seeing right now for the number of employees on the So again, just want to talk a little bit about how employees become health insurance eligible. On the town side, employees working over 20 hours a week are offered benefits. On the school side, there's the school employees working over 17 and a half hours per week are offered benefits. The reason there's a fluctuation between that is a school contract that was approved by the school committee back in 2007 reduced the number of hours available, or the number of hours required to obtain health insurance. So right now, due to that difference, we currently have about 8 school employees that receive health insurance benefits that they would be ineligible for if they work for the town. School employees, when I did the overview last week, I did the math. Right now, they're at 69% of the employees receiving health insurance through the town. Again, that number is fluid, but I think historically we've seen that number anywhere between like 65 and 71%. It's generally right in that range. Just want to talk about kind of the advantages of what the town gained by going to Maya. And I'll take a step back and just give you the history of that. When we were, and for those of you that were on the committee back in 2015, 16, and 17, we were seeing some significant health insurance challenges on the budget side. At that time, the town was with the Cape Cod Municipal Healthcare Group. And as we started to see, those rates going up every year, we decided to look at options. We spent a lot of time, both Marie Buckner and myself and other people working for the town, looking at different options, whether it was self-insuring, looking out for different joint purchase groups, remaining where we were at Cape Cod Municipal Healthcare Group. We spent some time, and then we finally made the decision that it was best for the town and the town's interest to leave the Cape Cod Municipal Healthcare Group and join Maya. So we spent about a year going through that conversion in 2019 and 2020, and we made that move permanently in 2020. It's probably been the best thing the town has done for us, for the budget. In my opinion, it really has stabilized our health insurance costs. I mean, we're obviously seeing the health insurance increase as it is on a national level, but it's really given us professional management over our health insurance. Maya is very well run. They have a lot of professional people that are overseeing the trust, really offering us solid advice, offering us different plan options. Again, as I mentioned, they're one of the largest joint purchase groups for municipalities in the country. And one of the most important things, again, was that two-party plan. So I did some math. If we didn't have that two-party plan this year, we would be spending about an extra $845,000 this year on the budget, because those people would have to be in the family plan. So in doing the math, just looking over the past years, the town has saved close to just a little under $4.6 million in total savings by moving to Maya. And that's all because of that two-party plan. One of the other things Maya has done is, we spend a lot of time, like, how can we save costs? Maya has a great program called Smart Shopper that we send out to our employees as employees sign up for health insurance. They're given a flyer about it. And really how the program works is that, let's say an employee needed an MRI. Essentially what Smart Shopper does is they're trying to get the employee, instead of using the expensive MRI at a hospital, to go to a private place that offers an MRI at a cheaper cost. And if the employee does that, they're still able to bring that MRI results to their doctor. And then if they use that less expensive MRI provider, in this example, Smart Shopper then would send them, depending on what the procedure was for, they'll send them like a $25 Visa gift card, sometimes a $50 gift card. And I've heard examples of people have received a $150 gift card for using the Smart Shopper program. So it's really helped us kind of help, keep our costs down somewhat. It's not as widely used as we would like, but it still has made a difference for us in our claims. And one of the other things is they offer a great wellness program. I think Marie's going to talk about that a little later in her talk this evening. They offer us a lot of wellness options that obviously help with our health insurance costs as well. So I just want to touch base on obviously some significant challenges we've had, and we'll talk about this year. When I meet with our Maya representative, really beginning probably in like September, October. I work with her and she kind of provides us the estimate of what we should really be booking for insurance for the next upcoming fiscal year. I speak with her throughout the process. And this year, there was a lot of concern, especially around the GLP-1 medications. And so the reason we originally got the 15% increase was from her. That was Maya's advice to us, was to build that into our budget. And then if the trust decided to make some changes in regards to the GLP-1s, we might see those costs come down. The trust met in late January, and a decision was made that Blue Cross and Blue Shield would no longer be covering the GLP-1s without a diabetes medication. That is what really drove our costs down this year. So we went from 15% all the way down to 5.9%. So it was obviously a significant savings, which Bud talked earlier tonight to you about when he's talking about the budget changes. In speaking with our representative, she mentioned that if the GLP-1 change was not made, the town probably would have seen between a 10 and 11% increase this year. So that was significant dollars that was saved due to that decision on the GLP-1s. So the town is obviously dealing with health insurance that we're seeing on a nationwide level. We do what we can to keep our costs down, to do the best we can with the plan. We work with Maya. Maya works extremely hard on getting us the best price that they're able to do so. But until changes are really made at a federal level, there's not too much we can do at this point in time. We're doing the best we can with health insurance, but unfortunately, health insurance, it is what it is at this point in time. We're all struggling with it. Every municipality in the state is struggling with it. We've heard some horror stories about some small towns out in Western Mass that saw increases of over 18, 19, and 20% on their health insurance that caused some serious budget challenges. Thankfully, we are not there. But until we see really changes at the federal level that they're going to impact health insurance nationwide, this is a situation we remain in. And I just want to talk about the 75-25 split. Again, the town paying 75% of the cost, where the employees pay 25%. This is pretty common on Cape Cod. Most of the towns are in probably between like 67 and 80%. There are a couple entities that are up to 90, 95% in covering. There were a couple entities that were down to like 50 and 60%. They have made changes to come back up towards that 75%. I think a lot of it has to do with employee retention and employee costs. I believe recently both Barnstable and Orleans have increased their percentage of what they're covering, and that really had a lot to do with employee retention. So happy to answer any questions on health insurance there before I move on to OPEB. Any questions I can answer?
Questions from members? Go ahead, Crystal.
Bill, I have a question on the 2575. Is that a Maya thing or is that a specific town thing?
I'm sorry, was that on the split, the 2575?
Yeah, is that a town decision or is that through Maya?
That's a town decision.
Okay.
Bob?
Good summary, thank you. So insurance costs was highlighted as one of the overall budget issues and concerns. And I heard, well, maybe the state will do something, maybe the federal government will do something, but I didn't hear. So we've stood up an initiative to do something. Look at co-pays, look at eligibility, rethink our recruitment and retention strategy. Are we, for all of the items that have been identified, called out as overall budget issues and concerns, is there and we're doing something about it where we could articulate the specific somethings, or are we just communicating these are big overall issues and concerns and that's it? What are we doing? What are we within our control trying to do to address this?
I'm sorry, but can you
Bill,
relay that question? I apologize.
I'll repeat it. Bob was asking where health insurance was identified as one of the issues of concern. What sort of steps are we taking to try to control those costs?
So really, we can look at copays, we can look at deductibles with Maya. Those are things I think that if we got into a pinch, we could certainly look at. There's a lot of union involvement. We'd have to impact bargain depending on what the town chose to do with the plans. I'll give you an example. When we made the conversion from Cape Cod Municipal Health Group to Maya, we spent a lot of time with our unions. We had some unions were great, easy to work with. Others, we literally spent hours and hours working with on that conversion. So there are some small things that we can manage and that we do look at. Maya does give us some options. There could be, possibly like a high deductible plan in the future. There's some options that we could look at that would, I think, if things got worse, we could certainly look at and give us some flexibility in the cost of health insurance. To be honest with you, the biggest, most positive change we made, we were proactive and did that change, making the move to Maya 6 years ago. I think if we were still in the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group today, I think that $15 million number would probably be closer to 20 right now. So I think we were proactive and we made the biggest change we could have made. We made it 6 years ago. I think if we started looking at copays, if we moved a copay, say from $20 to $25, I'm not sure it would be material enough to truly affect the bottom line in that positive a manner. But we do have some tools we can look at. We really look at that Smart Shopper program as something that's really, again, trying to keep costs down. The wellness program that the HR department runs really is trying to help keep costs down. But really, I think we can do some minor things to answer your question, Bob. But again, the truly major things that are going to affect health insurance are much bigger than the town.
I have a number of questions based on that. But just on the Smart Shopper, is there like a number if the town achieves a certain number or savings that then the town is somehow rebated back, or it will reduce ongoing costs? I get that the employee's incented to do it, but how's the town incented to do it?
So the town benefits by the claims dollars. So let's just, for example, I'll just try to give you a vanilla example. So if an employee went to Cape Cod Hospital and spent $1,000 on an MRI, that $1,000 essentially affects the town's health insurance bill. Whereas if they get that MRI done privately and it only costs them $250, now that $250 impacts the town. So really it's more of a cost reduction for a town. We don't get per se like a benefit check in the mail or anything like that. Again, it's really trying to reduce costs for the town.
And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So I guess I go to the question that Bob raised. Why wouldn't we be aggressive with a program like that in terms of promoting it with our employees, encouraging our employees?
We definitely do, and I'd like Marie
We incent the employee on top of the Blue Cross and still save?
I'd ask Marie to add in. Just so you guys are aware, Sandwich was one of 3 communities last year that Maya gave a Wellness and Safety Award to as running the best programs in the state. And that's all because of Marie and her assistant, Tara Way. But Marie can explain a lot of the wellness things we do, a lot of the training things we do to try to hold down costs. So I don't know if you want to highlight that or...
Marie, you're going to highlight that in your presentation? Okay. We'll hold off. Jackie.
So, Bud, I think as we're talking about the health insurance costs and just the fact that it's such a risk factor over time, one of the things you're pointing out is of the 2.5, of the increases of 2.5, this is now becoming an increasing percent of that increase. So, right, in this year it's 30%, but in future years it could be more. And then later you say, what if health increases were exempt from 2.5? Is that a thing?
No.
Anyone has ever mentioned might be coming down the pipe?
MMA has brought up a number of different things with the state, but I don't think anything really has any traction at this point yet.
Okay, so it's,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what kind of, because that seems like a
And there's
concern.
and Jim could explain this better than I could because he knows this a lot better, but there are very restrictive state laws that limit how fast or what towns can change. And it really has to be, bargained with not only the town unions, but also the school. And as Bill had highlighted, almost 70% of the people on insurance are school, not town. So there's a lot that would have to happen for any of those things to change. And then weighing the 75-25 versus some of the recruitment, which I know Marie will probably talk about in some of her presentation. We're trying to attract good employees and keep them as well.
Right. Yeah, and it's some of these issues and concerns are not the ones that are within our control. They're just, these are just, what are we going to do if this continues to rise at this clip?
Right.
And we're limited by, the 2.5 increases. So it doesn't seem like there is a lot of this issue is a within our control piece. Am I misreading that?
I think you're right on a lot of it.
Bob, did you have another comment?
I probably just don't understand, so forgive me. But we call out insurance costs specifically as an area of great concern. We highlight the increasing take on our annual tax revenue growth, and then we have a conversation around essentially that we don't have a plan, and I'm paraphrasing here, to do much of anything until it gets to be a concern. And I'm paraphrasing, we can check the tape. I guess I would just observe either it's a concern enough to highlight it as an overall concern, and we should have a plan to address it, right? Perhaps even making employees who work 17 and a half hours and then get to be eligible as ineligible and take care of that small step. But I'm just confused. I'm not drawing a conclusion other than to say I'm confused. Either it's a concern and we should be doing something about it because we've highlighted it specifically as an area of concern, or it's not a concern and we're not coming up with a recommendation to do anything about it. I just, I find that confusing.
Any other questions at this point? I have another question relative to a comment, I guess, because, Bill, we're using the word save for the two-party system. And I mean, at this stage, 6 years into that, it's really no longer, we haven't reduced last year to this year by $845,000 as a result of that plan. I don't believe. It's more, that's, if we didn't have two-party, this is what it would have cost us. So I don't think I can't imagine that we're going to go back and say, oh, we don't want the two-party anymore. So I think it's incumbent on us to use the best words, and I'm not sure save in this case is the best word. And then just relative to kind of the small things that you mentioned, is one of those small things to look at the carrier? Like, does it have to, with MIA, does it have to be Blue Cross Blue Shield, or are there other carriers? And is that a way to, who looks at those options? I would imagine it's not us, it's the agent that we have working for us on this, but how does that work?
So Maya is our agent, and Maya offers strictly Blue Cross Blue Shield at this time. Again, with Maya being one of the largest joint purchase groups for municipalities in the country, they are able to shop and get the best rate. Right now, currently, what they're offering us is Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they are the ones actually going around and shopping for that business. That's not something the town does. We're simply just, we're working with Maya and using the options that Maya provides to the town. So right now, Blue Cross and Blue Shield is the only carrier that the town is eligible to use at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on healthcare? Okay. Bill, move forward with OPEB.
Sure. So OPEB, I'll just begin with what OPEB stands for. It's an acronym for Other Post-Employment Benefits. OPEB benefits are non-pension benefits provided to our employees, such as dental, health, and life insurance. As you know, we have the OPEB fund that we put through every town meeting. We've been appropriating to that fund now for a number of years. Currently, right now, our OPEB liability is over $128 million. That was as of June 30th, 2024. Our OPEB balance back on June 30th, 2024 was just a shade under $2.7 million. That represented 2.1% of the town's OPEB position. We are currently, as of, we're moving forward. We made another appropriation. Right now, our position is over $3.6 million currently. When town meeting approves that OPEB appropriation, OPEB is much different than general fund money. We're able to invest OPEB funds in the stock market. We have done that ever since we started the fund, and we've had great success. Obviously, the stock market has had a good couple years. The town is seeing that. We do invest that money conservatively, and we do have ranges, like fixed income and equities and what have you. So it's not all $3.6 million sitting in one stock only. We do not invest in risky assets such as like crypto or anything like that. Again, it's, we're monitoring those funds prudently. We're investing those, I think, very conservatively, and we've had success in doing that. Obviously, we are a long way away from $128 million. It's going to be years. It's sandwiched in the same position that probably most municipalities are in the state. I believe that there's only 2 towns, if I'm correct, Wellesley and Chatham, that have their OPEB liability fully funded at this point in time. So we are not unlike the rest of the state. We are behind. We are continue to invest those funds. I think everyone on this committee has heard me bang the table every year looking to put money into OPEB. This is why we've done it. If you go back just to 2013, the town had $1 in its OPEB account. So we've really made strides. We've made some great strides over the last couple of years. We have a lot of work to do. We need to keep going. But again, this is something that is looked at, when the town gets rated by S&P, it gets looked at audit. So it's really important that we keep investing in this OPEB fund. It can only serve the town well. Ideally, we wouldn't be touching these funds for a number of years. But if the town ran into issues, again, with the retirement assessment, with health insurance, the town would have the ability to withdraw some funds from OPEB to help make up a budget shortfall. But ideally, we would not be touching these funds for a number of years. So that is really how we manage that OPEB fund. We've been managing it, again, really since 2015 when we started getting funds into the account. We've done well, but we have work to do there as well. So happy to take any questions on OPEB.
Anyone with a question? Jackie?
So with the savings from health insurance this year, the $800K, we moved some of that money and we did excess levy capacity. But OPEB we put $150,000. How was that determined? Rather, to put it in excess levy rather than OPEB.
So, Bill, the question was, when we saved some money in health insurance and county retirement assessment, we added, I think, $150,000 or so to OPEB, but then we put more in excess levy reserve. What was the thinking behind that?
Sure. I think when those events happen, we are looking at the budget as a whole. The more we can obviously put in excess levy, the cheaper the tax bills become. The more money that you put in stabilization and OPEB, the town reserves grow, but the tax bills do as well. I think there's a fine balance there. I think, when we had these big changes that Bud spoke of earlier, we were trying to, really help both of those causes at the same time. There's a school of thought, like especially when you put monies in OPEB and stabilization, that it's really just going into investments, into reserves, and you're not actually accomplishing anything in FY27. It's just simply sitting in a reserve account. I don't necessarily agree with that opinion, but that school of thought is out there. I think it's important for us to continue investing in these things. Dave was in earlier talking about wastewater. We know there's 8-10 years down the road, there is going to be town debt that's going to be have to be issued. And ideally, and I know you guys have heard me say this before, and I'll say it again, if we could get the town to AAA, it could literally save the town millions of dollars. And one of the key ways of doing that, one of the key things that S&P is going to be looking for, is these reserve fund balances. So to answer your question, we're really trying to just do the best we can when we're allocating those funds. When we had savings, we wanted to build up excess levy, we wanted to build up stabilization, we wanted to build up OPEB, so we kind of just split those funds to do the best we could.
Bob?
So just help me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the OPEB are benefits costs, future benefits costs that are contractual obligations, right? They're the town's obligations. The OPEB expense in any current year, are we just paying out of the budget? Where are we paying when the OPEB future liability becomes the current liability, how is that reflected in the budget? What line item is paying that, please?
Yeah, that's in the county health assessment. So the county retirement assessment, I'm sorry, not health, retirement assessment. So we've been doing fairly well in the scheme of things if you look like at a 10-year pattern with the county retirement, and we've been able to meet those costs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but OPEB is based on the theory that if the town goes out of business tomorrow, what are its post-employment costs for everyone basically who's now retired or no longer working for the town?
Correct.
Matt?
So does that calculation include not only current employees, but also current retirees? Yes.
I'm sorry, if I understood that, I think Matt was asking about both active and retirees. They're both included in that number. They're both included in that $128 million number.
And the follow-up question would be, so when that's calculated, is that based on an actuary's table on like life expectancies of each current employee? It seems like a very complicated, every year we talk about this, and every year I feel like I understand it, and then 2 days later I don't understand it. I don't know if I had a question in there.
So, if Matt was asking about how it's calculated,
yeah, and about the actuarial assessment through the county.
Yeah, so yes, there is. It's an actuarial assessment. The company's called Siegel. It goes through the county. So to give you an example, it generally takes them 7-8 months to calculate the number. So we provide them data for every single active employee, retired employee, date of birth, marriage status. For active employees, it's how many dependents do they have on the plan. Everything that you could think of, we have to provide for them, and they create this actuarial number. And generally, we get this usually in the springtime. So they go from June 30th, and it takes them all the way until about March or April until we see that number.
Bob.
So, and forgive me, I had a lot of caffeine today, so I'm amped. But if I thought of OPEB and the $128 million as a Visa card with a balance, right? We're effectively writing a check for the minimum payment out of our annual budgets and hoping eventually to catch up with the outstanding balance. That's essentially what we're doing, right? Is that a fair analogy? I guess I'll just go back to, we've got a page that flags these line items in the budget, group health and retirement, as a concern, and I think it is a concern. It's 19% of the budget, and that's up from prior years, and it's, to your point, 30% of the 2.5 increase. I would think there should be some sort of talk of a working committee, a group, to think about what's possible to rein some of this in. I'm going to be long gone by the time this is a problem, but I think it's incumbent upon the Finance Committee to point out, and Bud has done it already in this budget binder, this is a problem, and we should be talking about it like it's a problem, and we should have people thinking about what we're going to do about it beyond hoping that some other third party somewhere, including the State House, wakes up and does something for us.
One question that I had was relative to OPEB and healthcare costs. Do retirees, are they on the 75-25 as well?
Bill, you probably couldn't hear that, but I can answer. So they are
Sure.
75-25. But hypothetically, say it was a spouse and their spouse, a person and their spouse. When the member who worked for the town hypothetically passed away, the surviving spouse drops to 50-50.
Very good.
And I would add, like, of the two towns that I believe have been able to address their OPEB liability, Wellesley and Chatham. So just to explain what they did, Chatham, when we adopted the Cape Cod Land Bank, which was a precursor to the Community Preservation Act, they also adopted the Community Preservation Act. So they were taking in 3% for the land bank and 3% for the Community Preservation Act. They then voted at town meeting and asked for special legislation to change the Cape Cod Land Bank to a 3% surcharge on everyone's tax bill for their OPEB trust. And so the goal would be is once they met they had enough in the bank based on future investments about when these liabilities would hit. I think their intent is then to go back to the state and get rid of the authority to raise that 3%. So that's how they did it. Effectively, a 3% override that's going to continue forever until they get to whatever that number is. And I believe Wellesley had the same type thing where they went and asked the voters to adopt a payment plan basically to come up with that.
Very good. Nancy?
But is that 10-year requirement to retire, is that typical throughout towns? It's contracted, right?
Which is that one now?
That you only have to work 10 years to retire?
Yeah, that's a state law. It's 10 years, but it's a certain amount of hours, and it's higher than the health insurance number. I think it's 25 hours a week for at least that years. But then your retirement is actually based on your age and years of service. If someone only worked 10 years, the percentage they get is really small.
Anything else on OPEB? If not, we'll move on to the Human Resources update. And tonight, we're lucky to be joined by our town's Human Resource Director, Marie Buckner. I think it's been a couple of years, several years since you joined us.
I think it's been more than that.
Okay.
I think, I think that I don't know. It's lovely to see you all, but I can't imagine that you all want to hear from me. It's just like, oh my goodness, it's boring. But anyways, it's HR, right? It's the HR world. So if for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Marie Buckner. I'm the HR director. I've been serving the town since 1993, and I've been the HR director serving in that capacity since 2000. So I thought I would kind of start out by just kind of going over what we do in the HR department, just kind of a brief overview of what my two-person office does. And I have a wonderful assistant named Tara Way. She is my right hand, left brain, right brain, all of those kind of things, all combined. And it's a busy office. So we have, in the calendar year 2025, we posted 28 full-time positions, 13 part-time, 37 different seasonal positions, which represented about 140 different staff positions throughout the different seasons. We did 220-ish interviews, some in person, some over the phone, some Zoom, Teams. Every single time we post a job, regardless what it is, we look at the job description. We look to see if we can do something better. We look to see how we can make it more efficient, how we can, we just recently did it with looking at the job descriptions for the seasonal positions that we posted for the recreation department. We do it for the position that we just posted for the public facilities that's coming out tomorrow. We do it for every single position that we post to see if we can do it a little bit better the next time. We try to learn from what we did before to do it better the next time. We don't have signing bonuses in Sandwich, but we've managed to attract very qualified candidates. Sometimes we don't get quantity, but we get quality. And that has served us quite well throughout the years. So with that said, we work as a team, and I think I'm just most proud of that. We have 21 different departments, and any given day, and any given time, we've got each other's back, and we work closely with the school department, and all of the other departments. When we have a meeting we meet 9 times out of the year, standard meeting with the safety committee, and for unbeknownst to me exactly how I became the chair of the safety committee, which baffles everyone. I've got police, I've got fire, I've got school facilities director, sometimes the assistant facilities director. The last time I had Vicki from the superintendent's office, she came, and it was great to have her there for the meeting. So, and just a wide variety of individuals, not always department heads, sometimes all kinds of different levels in between. And so just the idea that everybody's invested in the safety committee. And we talk about a lot of different things. We had the fire department showing us how to use a fire extinguisher the last time. And so that the first time we're looking at using a fire extinguisher is not when we actually need it, but when we actually are using it. And safety in the workplace and safety at home and all of those different kinds of things. And we have an excellent safety record. And that does not happen by accident. And I mean that not as a pun, but it is purposeful. And again, we're very proud of that. So it's 21 different departments showing up for those meetings, and they do show up. We also learned how to use a bowler wrap. Does anybody know what a bowler wrap is? Anybody? You got to see how these things work. We went over to the police department and had Lieutenant Manley show us how a bowler wrap works. And it's this thing that comes out of a gun and it wraps somebody up without hurting them, just wraps around their part of their body and they go falling down instead of being fatally wounded. So in any case, we all learned how that works, and it was a nice bonding exercise as well. And so part of that, we do OSHA training, we do lots of supervisory training for new managers, for old managers like myself. Can never get enough training in improving the way that we do our work and serve the citizens of the town. We have very strong support with the MMA Suffolk program, which is, again, supervisory training. We've sent several employees to that over the last decade or so. I think I was part of that class in 2013, and it's actually where I met Tara, my assistant. So she was then working for the town of Barnstable. So at that point in time, I thought, I'd love to work with her someday, and here I am working with her. So that's kind of a little fun fact. We have some, there's no doubt there's some challenges in finding some of the financial positions that's just in general, those financial, that we've had great success with it, but just finding the town treasurer, there's a shortage of individuals that want to work in municipal government. And so there's just some, again, challenges in trying to find some of those and fill those positions. But there was also a time in about 3 or 4 years ago when we had some trouble filling positions within the Department of Public Works. We need commercial driver's license holders. And so what was happening is that we came up with a plan to train them ourselves. And there's a program that they've started there whereby we have seasoned CDL license holders that are current town employees that get trained properly and certified, that they train the new people coming in. And it's a great program that we have that's been very successful, that has retained current employees and has gotten them licensed and within the time frame that they need. And it's been a great way to build camaraderie. I think that in talking to Paul recently, the Director of Public Works, that he said that it's built great camaraderie again within his employees, and again he's very happy with the staff that he has currently. So in just kind of talking about some other things that we've done, we get a lot of grants, and we just got a $10,000 one, and right before the storm we were able to get a grant that fixed the salt shed that was leaking. That's pretty, so they were able to fix that from leaking. So that was a $10,000 one that we got through our insurance company. We were able to save through some of our safety efforts in fiscal year 24, $41,000, and fiscal year 25, we were able to save $34,500. And again, those just offset some of the costs. And those are just recognition of some of the safety things that we do and some of the different programs that we have for employees and safety. Getting to wellness, I think there was some conversations about wellness. Those programs that we offer school-wide, town-wide, we offer yoga, we offer all kinds of things online. We offer cooking classes and healthy eating, and I just send them out all the time. I am just incessant about the things that I send out to town employees. And it's just a way of encouraging individuals to remind them of the importance of eating healthy. We are a self-insured group, and so when you were talking about, what is the incentive when you don't spend $1,000 at an MRI and you spend $250, that's $750 that we're not paying out. That's literally that's in a different part of the ledger now. And so every single time when you make a choice to not go to the emergency room if you don't go to the emergency, instead of you go to your primary care, you're saving money. And so making those choices with regard to your health care are always important. So when, certainly part of HR is obviously staying on top of all the newest anti-harassment, anti-discrimination, all of the obvious things that you would imagine that an HR department would be doing. I go over a red book, and a red book, every single employee, everyone knows what the red book is. The red book has every policy there is. I go over their collective bargaining agreement. We go, so without, those kind of things would seem obvious, so I'm not going to really touch on that, but we talk about all the different things that, as a town employee, they're responsible for comporting themselves in the workplace. They are emblazoned with the town of Sandwich. They have to comport themselves in a way to make themselves, to represent the town of Sandwich in a way that best makes you just want to, I just always want to put the best face forward for the town, and just have that employee, you know what I'm trying to say. It's just so important that we serve the residents of the town in the best way possible. We are honored to be here, and just to have these jobs. We are very fortunate. I guess to say some of the other things that we do, I'm kind of rattling on because there's so many things that we do, because it's like you're never in the wrong place with HR. And there's the phrase that I used that when I started in public service a really long time ago was, we came to work, we worked hard, we didn't finish, we never will, and we'll see you tomorrow. And that's just been my mantra, right? It's just, that's what we do, that's what we should do. So I'm not sure if I've answered the questions that you had tonight, because I'm not sure what I'm doing here. You know what I'm saying? So to the extent that, to talk about Bob Guerin's point about us not thinking about things in a way that about the health insurance, I guess I feel like we are doing that, and that we do think one of the things is that we're absolutely talking about the process of offering different plans that could reduce the costs, which are those high deductibles, which and we haven't finished having those conversations yet with our insurance representative. And one of the things that Maya had made the decision, which was the biggest decision that cut the premium down from, as Bill said, 11% down to 5%, was the GLP-1 decision that was made at the Maya level, which reduced the plans. And that was made very purposefully, that had a huge effect on that. So I think that every opportunity we have within the confines of the rules that we are faced with, there's collective bargaining that we must adhere to. And so that one of the things that we're going to be having soon is an insurance advisory committee meeting, which we bring in all the unions and we have conversations about this. And that requires us to collect, without getting into a lot of the details of what that entails, it does involve communicating with the unions in such a way that they're part of the conversation, that it's not a unilateral decision made by the town, that they're part of the communication. I know that Mr. Dever knows about that. I guess, I'm open to questions that you might have, that you want me to go into more detail.
Thanks. Why don't we open it up and have folks ask questions?
And I really don't have a question per se, just a comment. And I've worked with public unions for now 20-something plus years. And you see HR departments that don't have it together, and you see ones that do. And we have one that does have it together. It just makes a tremendous difference. I know, like I said, you folks might have the opportunity to see the other ones in the state, but I do. And I want to commend you guys for the great work you do. Thank you.
I guess one of the things that we purposely never talk about publicly is a lot of what we do, and I say we because when it hits the fan, it's usually Marie and I and Heather and sometimes Labor Council and whatever the appropriate department head is. But we also have to deal with employees behave badly. And this is just off the top of my head. When most people get hired, they have a year probationary period. Between that and either disciplines or discharges or reach an agreement for someone to leave. I'm going to jinx us, Marie, but we've worked together for 30 years. We've never once had a personnel decision overturned. And we work really hard at that, and we don't let stuff through, and we address it appropriately with great legal advice, but we've never lost. And the two of us don't have that much longer to go, and I hope we can make it till the end, and we never lost. So, and again, I'm not saying that, there's small things we wish we could have done differently, but there's a lot of deep things that we talk about to make sure we do it the right way. And I want to sort of back up what Jim said, is we have very, very good relations with our unions. And they know us well enough, and we trust each other well enough that if something is difficult going on, we can have open adult conversations with them. And many times we're both trying to support each other to do the right thing for people who may not have made good decisions along the way. And I'll leave it at that, because I think we're very blessed that we don't have a ton of those, but I think people would be surprised how many times a department head walks in one of our 2 offices and we're just like, ooh, here we go again. 'Cause when you have 210 year-round employees, you're always going to have some of those issues. Heather?
I'm sure I've said this at other meetings, but I don't think I've said it when Marie's been here. Since I've been here, I think we've had 2 grievances, formal grievances filed, and that's in 7 years. That's relatively unheard of. We don't have a pattern of mediation or arbitration, which is really commonplace in other communities. So the standard that's set, and it starts with HR, and it starts with meeting with every single employee and going through those policy guidebooks, and specifically updating them on an annual basis. There isn't a policy that the HR department doesn't review and make sure when we hear from our attorneys that the policy is updated to meet the most current standards for the guidance we have from attorneys. Again, that is not the norm in other places. So really high level of care here that I think Marie, it's clear that she cares, but the level of care that she puts into every bit of work is really extraordinary.
But you broached the subject of you.
No, I was
Stating
just-
to
I
you
was
and
just
Marie.
joking. Well-
So I'm curious, like, how do we think about that reality, right?
Yeah.
Kind of succession planning and getting people ready for the next opportunity within the town, those types of things.
Want me to go? All right, I'll go, and then Maria go next. So I would say we think a lot about that, and we're always trying to develop people internally, not because we favor people internally, but because, as Marie highlighted, the pickings are pretty slim. And you can correct me, but generally when we advertise for department head level positions, we're getting way fewer applications, especially qualified applications, than we would get, say, 15 years ago. And there could be, any number of reasons for that. So I think we've tried to work hard. If we identify someone with talent internally, we try to get them the training that she mentioned, take some supervisory training. I know I talked a little bit, and I won't say any names, but I talked with Ed and Crystal long before we got to the budget process, because it's fair to say if you look at some of our department heads, they may look like about my age, and there's going to be turnover coming up in the next handful of years, and at some pretty high levels. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is in those departments identify people who could either possibly take over the job or be really strong to support whoever comes in. And I think, I won't go into the specific departments, but we could easily say we could identify some people in probably 6 of 7 departments. There's someone there that can step in and do a really good job. And then we know there's some where there's not people coming up internally, and we're going to have to go outside. And I think that's something that Marie, Bill, and I, and Heather, we talk about a lot. And, we've tried to, I think probably the one area when you talk about municipal finance is the hardest time to get qualified people to go for those department head openings. So, I know Bill has worked hard with our town accountant, with our director of assessing, and with our treasurer collector. Like, we're trying to build up the bench strength, for lack of a better word. And I will say, just really briefly, that when it comes time for people to retire, I just want people to know, there's no golden parachute. You get, when you leave, you get paid any earned and unused vacation, black and white. And I'm making it up, if you're a non-union department head or any non-union employee, if you work with us for 15 years and you go to retire, not resign, you get, correct me if I'm wrong, Marie, 25% of 120 days or 30 days, I think it comes out to, that you would get if you didn't touch any of your sick time. So, that's it. That's it. And it's capped. I mean, there's no, crazy things. And I will say, I've never had to come to the finance committee for a reserve fund transfer to cover retirement costs. And it goes back to when I mentioned, I think last time we could physically meet, when Bob was chair, he had us do an exercise which really opened our eyes, that showed over a 5-year period, 1/3 of our staff turns over, whether they come and go, whether they retire, whether they get promoted to a different job. That sort of surprised us that there was that volume. So people are retiring all the time. You can imagine in a big department like police, fire, DPW, they generally can ride it out because the person they're hiring might come in at less, and depending on when that retiree goes, they pay for the cost. But if it's any of our departments where we have very little operating budget money, I have to pay that from that personnel expense account. So when someone goes to retire from a small department, we cover that cost. But we've always had enough in that account to do it, and we always return quite a bit of money at the end of the year in that account every year. I think that's a big thing that we've talked about a lot. The transitions over the next, I'll just say roughly 3 years, there's going to be changes, town-wide.
Nancy?
Thanks, Marie. How does someone from outside find out about openings?
So we post every single job on the town's website, and from there, man, it gets put out in a lot of different places. And so sometimes we'll put it on Indeed, it will go to Monster from there, it will go, and it's viral at that point in time. And so we'll get applications from all over the place once we put it out. And it's amazing how the different social networks will take it and run with it. We'll put it on Facebook, we'll put, and I think as we get more savvy with our new our communications coordinator, we're getting LinkedIn, I guess. We're going to be, so it'll be fun to see where else we can go with our technology. I admittedly am not particularly technologically savvy, but we get some great impact information that way out to people. And there's some positions that we are very deliberate, and of course for those positions that are very specific to a profession, then we send it out to that listserv that states, so there's some that we really are very targeted for an audience, especially if it's a particular type of profession that we're looking for, so. One of the things that I didn't talk about was workers' compensation, and that is something that, again, the HR office handles townwide, and so it is, whether it's police, fire, DPW, school, we have got, again, a lot of cooperation that way, and so it's nice. One of the things that I think that has been good to have and really keeps the claims contained, whether it's workers' comp, safety, wellness, those sorts of things, is having a central location for them to go. For example, in some communities, workers' comp is for an employee like myself. I'm not public safety. But for 111F, which is public safety, specifically police and fire, some entities, it goes just to a chief, and then the chief makes that decision. And it never gets to an HR or a town manager. And sometimes there's some disconnect, and you just don't have, and I don't mean control in the sense of, in some insidious way, but where it's all centrally located. It's the town manager that signs off on those things, and that position is the one that has that authority. And I think that having it get signed off by the chiefs has there a chain of command of the chief saying, yes, it's a legitimate injury, yes, it's and then the town manager signing off on it. And so there's a chain, and the same thing with any workers' comp injury, that department head is signing off saying, what happened, how did it happen, how does it not happen again? How do we do that? And again, it's just like that accountability and so with all of the employees that we have in all of the 21 different departments, with all of the different, we don't all make widgets. We all do something different in all of those different departments. We have 5 people on injury right now. 5. And 4 of them, something bad happened to them by somebody else. And 1 tripped on ice. So it's pretty good. That doesn't happen again by accident. That's those departments doing their job. So and that's not HR. That's departments caring about their employees. That's a team effort. And that's not HR. That's people caring. That's departments caring. And that's lovely. It's a lovely place to work.
Thank you. Any other questions for Marie? All set, Marie. Thank you very much for being with us tonight and sharing what HR is up to. So thanks. Moving on, old business. Anybody have any old business? Jim, you're going to defer to Bob.
I want to stick with a theme for a minute and just make an observation for folks to think about for next time. Among the overall budget issues, tuition assessments is also there. And we spent a little time talking about it a week or two ago, noting that in the recap sheet, there was a $5 million figure attached to tuition assessments. So I just wanted to plant a seed with the committee to think about, and for all of us to think about in terms of what are we doing with these budget issues. If you thought of Upper Cape Tech as out-of-district assessments, you'd add the 3 million to the 5 million. And within the school budget, there's an identified $2 to $3 million in out-of-district tuition assessments for SPED. So I would just observe for us to think about and discuss it at a future meeting. That's probably $11 million of spending in the budget that's out-of-district tuition assessments. That's a big number. It's a lot bigger than the $5 million number that got highlighted as a concern. So at a future date, I think we should have a conversation around, we spot the issue, we've highlighted the issue, what's next? And I think $10, $11 million of spend is certainly worth thinking about what kind of recommendation this committee might want to make. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Jim?
Yes, actually, it's a good follow-up to Bob's point. I'm going to hand this to you. We could take one and pass it down, and I'd ask one to be submitted to the record here. It's an article from the Boston Globe from February 13th, really just after we had our meeting on the school district budget. And it's entitled, "Financial Death Spiral Threatens Long-Term Survival of Rural Mass Schools." And it opens with kind of spots on, and I'll just kind of quote it. It says, "A dramatic decline in enrollment in Massachusetts rural school districts over the last quarter century has created a vicious cycle of budget cuts and diminished academic opportunities for tens of thousands of students. From the Berkshires to Martha's Vineyard, rural enrollment has plunged by nearly 30% over the last 25 years, far steeper than the 7% decline for all other districts statewide." And what it focuses on is what we were or some of us were talking about, is that really the thing that has hurt us the most is that rural school leaders and other local officials have repeatedly warned Beacon Hill lawmakers their schools are sliding into deepening financial crisis. The plight represents one of the biggest pieces of the unfinished business under the state's school funding overhaul from 2019. And that included a commitment for public schools with more than $1.5 billion in aid, which still hasn't been received. And only a small portion goes to us here in the rural districts. As one of the students pointed out at Turner Falls High School, which is part of the Gil Montague Regional School District, the less students we get, the less funding we get, then it becomes, what do we have to cut? Then it makes it even harder to get out of Turner Falls to start your own life. Substitute Turner Falls for Sandwich. If you keep cutting and cutting the school district budget, it gets harder for our students in the public school systems to go on with their life. There was, and we talked really from 30,000 feet about, maybe you merge school districts and whatnot. Well, this article points to the idea that there's no evidence that that even helps the budget situation or improves costs. Vermont in 2025 had a state law calling for consolidating the state's more than 100 districts into fewer than 10. But they stopped doing it because they found out there was no evidence that these supersized school districts reliably lower costs or improve educational opportunities or expand equity. Across the state, they've spoken about, combining into bigger districts. And as I'd like to point out, in the Pioneer Valley Regional School District in Northfield, Mass, they didn't do it. And what they able to do, they started to invest in their schools again, in their music programs, in their woodshop programs. And that's what kept the students there. Because it's not really the quantity of the students, it ends up being the quality of the students. And when you have a lower student population, one thing it does do is it doesn't let students slide under the radar screen. So a positive we have is that more students get the attention they need. And I guess in summarizing, and really what I think we should all think about, and to Bob's point, we can't wait for Beacon Hill to wake up. We've got to wake them up. So really, it is incumbent upon us. It's incumbent on the residents of Sandwich to contact their representatives, contact their state rep, contact their state senator, and ask them, what are you doing for our funding in our district? And that I think is really the biggest problem we're facing right now in our schools. It's not here at the local level, it's the state level. And until we get heard, it's going to be the same conversation over and over.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else for old business?
Jim, I just want to thank you for bringing this up. This is, really helpful, and it's definitely something for us, to think about, like with the wood shop, home ec, and just programs like that. I think if those could be implemented, that might be a little something that we have over tech in our district. A small portion, but every little bit helps with, the enrollment and what we saw, during the budget presentation. So, thanks for this.
You'll see quotes from the superintendent from that district to that point exactly in the article.
Yeah, and it was valuable when I was younger. When we did it, I think we were 11, and I still remember, those classes, how to sew, how to, different recipes, how to make a wooden box. Like those things, they do last when they're on that younger level.
Nancy.
It seems like we've been asking the superintendent for years, what is the exit interview strategy and what have they learned? Because they keep saying we're doing it or we're going to do it, but we haven't seen anything yet. So maybe if he comes back, or maybe that could be a question, specifics. What are you learning from the families that do not return?
Okay, I'll pass it along. Anybody else? Old business. New business. Anybody have any new business for tonight? Seeing none there. Public comment. Any public comment from anybody that's with us this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you again to Dave Mason. Thank you, Marie Buckner. Thank you, Bill, for the special presentations this evening, and for all the work that everybody's doing to get us ready for some decisions on the fiscal 27 budget. And again, we'll meet next week, March 10th at 6 p.m. We'll be joined, as I mentioned earlier, by the leaders of the police, fire, and DPW for their budget discussion. And as always, if you've got questions that you want them to come prepared to discuss and answer for us, please send them to Bill and or me, and we'll be sure that they get those ahead of time. Does anyone else have any other closing remarks? Seeing none there, motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Motion by Crystal, second by Nancy. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all. Have a great evening. See you next week.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Bill. Thank you.